Hi, I'm Cloverine Louise, and I love learning new things. Let's turn the pages in our textbook and learn together. Have you ever faced systemic obstacles while simultaneously being told by those in charge of unequal systems to uplift yourself from the poverty and generational poverty we are subjecting you to? Have you ever overcome, prospered, and succeeded in the face of adversary powers, just for them to showcase their insecurities and burn it all down? Today, we'll be learning about Black Wall Street, not just one community. We're also going to learn about the many thriving Black communities across the United States that established and generated extraordinary wealth, culture, and excellence. Before we begin, it is important to understand why these self-sustaining and thriving Black communities existed in the first place. After the Civil War, the Reconstruction era signified the early days of freedom, and freed people began building their lives in the aftermath of slavery. As a result of centuries of enslavement, Southern white resentment, and the federal government's failure to maintain Reconstruction, Southern whites rose to political power, enforced Black Code and Jim Crow laws, and subjected freed people to unequal treatment. These laws banned Black Americans from local restaurants, hospitals, and other public spaces. If they were not banned, the law allowed business owners, officials, and the white public to disrespect and subject Black Americans to substandard treatment. Before the failure of Reconstruction, Black Americans worked hard to establish a life, a family, and earn an education after slavery. As a result of the Black vote, Black legislators and politicians filled the United States government until the Compromise of 1877 and the failure of Reconstruction. So, after the Compromise of 1877 and the reinstatement of Southern white patriarchal rule, what did some Black Americans do? They put their resources together and built their own communities. Black-owned banks provided loans to Black businesses and homeowners. Also, some existing Black business owners provided loans to other Black Americans trying to establish homes and businesses. In these Black communities, there were thriving Black business districts that included hotels, newspapers, restaurants, and theaters. These communities also included schools and churches that helped foster Black education and leadership. Residents in these Black communities circulated wealth among themselves, building generational prosperity for the collective community. These were self-sustaining communities. Black communities thrived despite the systematic inequality that surrounded them, making them a target. Let's begin by discussing Jackson Ward in Richmond, Virginia. Jackson Ward was founded in 1871, and historians consider it to be the first Black Wall Street. In 1793, Abraham Peyton Skipwith, who had bought his freedom in 1789, bought parcels of land and built a 3-story cottage, becoming the first Black American to own a home in Jackson Ward. Following the Civil War, free and newly freed Black people moved to Jackson Ward, creating a thriving business community. Jackson Ward hosted St. Luke Penny Savings Bank and the True Reformers, contributing to the town's growing reputation as the cradle of Black capitalism. In 1901, Maggie Walker expressed the importance of a Black-owned bank at the Independent Order of St. Luke annual convention. Although other Black-owned banks, like the True Reformers, existed, she understood the importance of Black-owned financial institutions. In 1903, Maggie Walker became the first Black woman to charter a bank in the United States. Giles Beecher Jackson was the first African American to practice law before the Supreme Court of Virginia. He was formerly enslaved and moved to Richmond shortly after becoming free. Before studying law, he worked as a servant and law clerk. Also, he owned and edited the Negro Criterion, a weekly newspaper. In 1895, Morton Dean became one of 5 African Americans elected to serve on the Richmond City Council. He was formerly enslaved, born in 1853, and grew up in Buckingham County, arriving in Richmond around 1867. Morton Dean worked as a laborer who also maintained an active civic life. From 1894 to 1896, he served on the Richmond Common Council. Several newspapers highlighted political gerrymandering tactics that limited Black political power. While there were some local political leaders, The political interference altered the true scope of the Black vote and political power. Jackson Ward became an epicenter of Black business and entertainment, known nationwide as the Harlem of the South. The venue and the Hippodrome Theater are two entertainment venues that were located in Jackson Ward, where entertainers, including Ella Fitzgerald, Duke Ellington, Bill Bojangles Robinson, Billie Holiday, Lena Horne, Cab Calloway, Nat King Cole, James Brown, and other Black performers who worked on the Chitlin Circuit. In 1940, the Richmond Redevelopment and Housing Authority, or RRHA, received $1.97 million from the U.S. Housing Authority to clear two slum clearance projects to make way for Gilpin Court. Gilpin Court is RRHA's largest public housing community with 781 units. In simpler terms, the local government demolished Black-owned homes that white officials labeled as slums. The threat of Jackson Ward's prominence made the area a target of urban renewal. Even though the majority of the Black political seat had been gerrymandered, officials targeted the existence of this prominent and unified Black community. As a result, around 1,000 other structures and around Black-owned homes were demolished by wrecking balls, displacing 7,000 residents to build a corridor for the Richmond-Petersburg Turnpike and its conversion into E95. Demolitions and federally funded urban renewal projects continued into the 1980s, altering and destroying the historical landscape of Jackson Ward. Next, our textbook and magnifying glass will take us on an adventure to study Durham, North Carolina, and the Hayti District. Hayti was a self-sustaining African-American community in North Carolina that emerged during the Reconstruction era as a thriving hub of Black-owned businesses, churches, schools, restaurants, cultural institutions, and nightlife. In 1898, the North Carolina Mutual Life Insurance Company was founded in Durham and became one of the most influential and largest Black-owned businesses in the United States. The founders included prominent Black community leaders in Durham, including John Merrick, Dr. Aaron Moore, Charles Clinton Spaulding, William Gaston Pearson, Edward Austin Johnson, James Edward Shepard, Pinckney William Dawkins, and Doc Watson. John Merrick was an entrepreneurial barber and real estate investor who served as the first president of the North Carolina Mutual Life Insurance Company. Dr. Aaron McDuff Moore was the first African-American physician in Durham and served as the primary financial backer of the North Carolina Mutual Life Insurance Company. Charles Clinton Spaulding was Dr. Moore's nephew, who joined the organization as an agent and manager. He later led the company during its greatest decades of growth. William Gaston Pearson was a prominent local educator and principal in Durham. He served as a business partner with the North Carolina Mutual Life Insurance Company. Edward Austin Johnson was an attorney, historian, and law school dean at Shaw University. James Edward Shepard was a minister and educator who later founded North Carolina College. P.W. Dawkins was a local school teacher, and Doc Watson was a tinsmith. In 1911, Booker T. Washington praised and acknowledged Hayti for its commercial networks, which served as a model of Black enterprise. Unfortunately, Hayti faced a detrimental fate that other Black self-sustaining communities faced because of urban renewal projects and highway construction, which bulldozed Hayti, displacing thousands of Black residents and businesses. Hayti was not destroyed by violence, infighting, or failure. The community was erased by policy. In the 1950s and 1960s, federal policies and the construction of the North Carolina Highway cut directly through Hayti, displacing more than 4,000 families and 500 businesses. Now, let's learn about Sweet Auburn in Atlanta, Georgia. Sweet Auburn was a prominent and vibrant Black neighborhood that became known for its entrepreneurial spirit and cultural richness. In 1905, Alonzo F. Herndon founded the Atlanta Life Insurance Company. He was formerly enslaved and became a very successful entrepreneur, buying a burial association for $140 and reorganizing it into the Atlanta Mutual Insurance Association. Sweet Auburn was also the birthplace of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., one of the most pivotal leaders of the civil rights movement, and the street was the headquarters of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Sweet Auburn showed the nation that Black economic power, community, and civil rights leadership were not separate entities. They were the same fight, and sticking together as a community served as the reason for Sweet Auburn's success. The ramifications of urban renewal and governmental divestment from urban areas led to the destruction of Sweet Auburn and the construction of the I-75 and I-85 interstates. Is it a coincidence that all these once prominent and self-sustaining Black communities experience legislative destructive intrusion? Our next lesson destination is Bronzeville in Chicago, Illinois. Do you remember our lesson about the Great Migration when 6 million African Americans moved away from the South? Many of these migrants moved to Chicago, and one of the communities where they settled was Bronzeville, establishing a rich cultural and community connection with other migrants who fled the South. Bronzeville became the cultural capital of Black Chicago, home to jazz clubs, newspapers, businesses, and some of the most vibrant Black culture in the United States, showing that Black wealth and Black Wall Street extended throughout the nation, because this is not just Southern history, but national history. Bronzeville is on Chicago's South Side and experienced a cultural renaissance between the 1910s and 1940s. Bronzeville became the home to many influential African American figures, including Bessie Coleman, Ada B. Wells, Gwendolyn Brooks, Richard Wright, and more. Neighborhood discrimination led to concentrated areas with a majority Black population because of the lack of housing options, revealing that the North, Midwest, and Western areas, where Southern African Americans fled, also had discriminatory practices. The 1919 Red Summer was a period of violence after a white man stoned and drowned an African American teenager named Eugene Williams. As violence spread throughout the city from angry whites, 1,000 Black homes were burned. Despite the violence, Bronzeville continued to prosper as a cultural hub of excellence. Now, our next lesson takes place on U Street and the Shaw Corridor in Washington, D.C., right in the nation's capital. By 1910, the U Street and Shaw Corridor supported over 200 businesses, including performance halls, professional offices, and cultural venues. U Street became known to many as the Black Broadway, and was home to Duke Ellington, Pearl Bailey, and some of the greatest performers in American history. Black excellence is flourishing in the shadow of the Capitol building. One of the booming businesses on the street was the Whitelaw Washington, D.C.'s first luxury hotel for African Americans, serving as an important community gathering space. The hotel was built and financed by the Black community within the U Street corridor. The hotel was a popular venue for jazz performances, including those by Duke Ellington. Another business was the 12th Street to YMCA, the first YMCA for African Americans in the United States. The building was designed by William Sidney Pittman, an African American architect, and served as a haven for African American men who frequented the YMCA and the library, and learned from successful African Americans in the meeting rooms. Langston Hughes was among the successful and prominent figures who rented a room when he began publishing his poetry. This YMCA also served as a meeting place for Thurgood Marshall and his mentor, Charles H. Houston, where they established many of the legal strategies that would be utilized in the civil rights movement. Boley, Oklahoma, is the largest all-Black town in Oklahoma and one of only 13 that still exist. Boley, Oklahoma, was established on land allotted to a Creek freedman named James Barnett and was named after J.B. Boley, a railroad official for Fort Smith and Western Railway. The town was founded in 1903 and incorporated in 1905. By 1911, Boley had more than 4,000 residents, several businesses, 2 banks, and 3 cotton gins. There was also an electric generating plant, water system, and ice plant. In 1905, Booker T. Washington visited Boley and proclaimed that it was the most enterprising and in many ways the most interesting of the Negro towns in the United States. In 1912, construction on the Masonic Temple was completed and was said to be the tallest building between Ocmulgee and Oklahoma City. Boley also included higher education institutions, Creek Seminole College and Methodist Episcopal College. Boley began to experience economic decline because of falling crop prices and federal limits on cotton. The Great Depression created additional economic turmoil. Around this time, the population declined from 1,154 in 1920 to just 874 in 1930. By World War II, the population was 942. By 1960, the population dipped to 573, and by 1980 to 423. However, Boley began experiencing rejuvenation in the year 2000. By 2010, the population had increased to 1,185, and the town continues to host the nation's oldest black rodeo every Memorial Day weekend. Now, let's travel to two former Detroit neighborhoods. The first one is Black Bottom. The neighborhood was named after its rich and dark topsoil. The neighborhood became home to tens of thousands of black migrants who moved to Detroit during the Great Migration. Detroit offered automotive and other industrial jobs, as well as an escape from blatant Jim Crow laws and mass lynchings. However, as later riots and injustices reveal, inequality persisted in Detroit, both systematically and through general societal practice. In Detroit, housing covenants and redlining restricted black people to specific neighborhoods, including Black Bottom. As a result, these areas were overcrowded, and because of their racist views, officials allocated less funding to these areas, creating more disrepair and worse building conditions. Nevertheless, residents in these areas formed tight community bonds, established businesses, and supported one another and one another's businesses. Legendary people grew up in these communities, including Della Reese, Sugar Ray Robinson, and civil rights leaders. Hastings Street was a mainstay for commercial properties, including churches, doctors' offices, pharmacies, and grocery stores. Systemic job placement and hiring practices created unequal socioeconomic conditions. Still, jobs paid higher wages than those in southern agricultural, domestic, and other industries, driving black migrants to move along with the less blatant curtain of societal racism. As a result, Black Bottom was the poorest and one of the most heavily populated sections in Detroit. A third of black residents lived within Paradise Valley, with some homes housing 3 to 4 families. Although critics labeled this community for its overcrowding, rampant diseases, and crime, these same critics, those who held power, were the ones writing the law and upholding general practices to create these conditions. They are also the same public and official critics, exaggerating claims of community filth and crime because of racism. The city of Detroit's government designated and considered these areas as slums. As a result of this declaration, officials approved the destruction of Black Bottom and Paradise Valley, not to ensure the repair of existing dwellings or the construction of new buildings for its residents, but to overhaul the area to construct city and medical-operated institutions, including housing projects. Officials funded the demolition through the Federal Housing Act of 1949. In 1950, the city condemned 423 residential homes, 22 manufacturing plants, 109 businesses, and 93 vacant lots for a freeway project. The redlining that still restricted African Americans to certain neighborhoods and the unfair practices that restricted job placement and promotions still existed, but demolition was approved. The Federal Highway Act of 1956 secured funding for the construction of the highway over Hastings Street. Remember, this is the street that served as a mainstay for commercial property, including churches, doctors' offices, pharmacies, and grocery stores. This street was a living example of critics' cry, why can't they pull themselves up by their bootstraps? As you've seen, the self-sufficiency of African Americans prevails despite obstacles. Still, it is altered, destroyed, and often omitted from traditional narratives by the same critics who made that very statement. Many of the former residents of Black Bottom were relocated to public housing projects, not to independent homes, private structures, or apartments that truly led to home ownership. They had to move to housing projects, including the Brewster Douglas housing projects and Jeffries Homes. Rosewood was a black community that was thriving and filled with prominence. Although political power was not prosperous, the community maintained a prosperous, tight-knit, and middle-class community. Rosewood earned its name because of the cedar industry and the reddish color of the cedar wood. 2 pinnacle mills were located nearby in Cedar Key. Local residents worked in turpentine mills and sawmills. Also, farming was an industry where some were employed. On January 1st, 1923, a white woman named Fannie Taylor lied and said she had been assaulted by Jesse Hunter, a black man who had escaped a chain gang. There was no evidence that she had been assaulted by Mr. Hunter, but a white mob formed a manhunt for him in Rosewood. Fannie Taylor had been involved in an affair with a white man, and to prevent being caught, lied on a black man to continue hiding her affair. On January 5th, 1923, a white mob of 200 to 300 men attacked the black community of Rosewood, Florida. This white mob terrorized the black citizens of Rosewood, killing an estimated 30 to 40 black men, women, and children. The mob burned down the town. Some surviving residents hid in the woods and fled to Gainesville, Florida by train. Can you imagine being forced from your home, your community, and never returning? Can you imagine the lost connections, family, and history? And now, our lesson takes us to Greenwood in Tulsa, Oklahoma, to the community most people know as Black Wall Street. At the turn of the 20th century, African Americans founded and developed the Greenwood District in Tulsa. The community grew and flourished as a black economic and cultural mecca. It began with O.W. Gurley, an African American entrepreneur who purchased 40 acres of land in Tulsa and sold it exclusively to black settlers. Booker T. Washington coined the area's nickname Black Wall Street because a single dollar could circulate within the Greenwood District for nearly a year before it expanded beyond the district. The Greenwood District expanded across a 35 square block area. Despite the rigid and widespread segregation surrounding them, African Americans built this community, establishing schools, offices, newspapers, movie theaters, doctors' offices, retail businesses, grocery stores, shoe shine shops, hotels, beauty salons, and other businesses to support themselves and sustain their economy. The 1920 Tulsa City Directory recorded 108 business establishments, 21 churches, 4 hotels, 2 movie theaters, and a Masonic lodge. The Stratford Hotel was the largest black-owned and operated hotel in the United States, equipped with a dining hall, saloon, and regular jazz performances from local and traveling musicians and artists. In May of 1921, Greenwood experienced one of the deadliest racial massacres in U.S. history, destroying the community and taking lives. A black teenager was falsely accused of assaulting a white girl on an elevator, leading whites to attack Greenwood, whose residents defended their homes, before being overpowered by airplanes dropping bombs and continual violence from whites who burned their homes and businesses. 300 people died, 191 businesses were destroyed, and 1,256 homes were burned to the ground by the mob, amassing damages over $1.5 million and $750,000 in personal property damage. What some people do not know is that African Americans rebuilt Greenwood after the massacre. By the summer of 1922, over 100 buildings had been rebuilt. In 1925, Greenwood served as the host to the annual Booker T. Washington National Business League Convention. By 1942, there were over 200 businesses in Greenwood. Still, decline arose in the 1960s as white residential neighborhoods became available for black residents to move to. Leading residents to move away, urban renewal, and the construction of the freeway also destroyed much of Greenwood between the 1960s and 1980. We learned today about several locations known as Black Wall Street, but when most people hear or read the words Black Wall Street, the only thing they think of is one of them, Greenwood in Tulsa, Oklahoma. The Greenwood District was extraordinary and prominent, earning its title as Black Wall Street, and what happened in 1921 was a tragedy that deserves to be remembered and never forgotten. Today, we learned about the different areas known as Black Wall Street, acknowledging the history of each location, the community strength, intelligence, and entrepreneurship of its residents, who built strong communities and businesses, and sought to make a better future for themselves and future generations. In this lesson, we discovered information that most textbooks don't tell you. Black Wall Street was never just one community or one street. It was a movement to attain better socioeconomic conditions they had to build themselves, not provided or secured to them, despite the tax dollars they paid to ensure the same federal programs and investments as white Americans. These Black Wall Streets, and other prominent Black neighborhoods arose because of a collective mindset to support each other and to advance in the face of an oppressive system designed to shut them out of socioeconomic stability. From Jackson Ward in Richmond, Virginia, the first Black Wall Street, to Sweet Auburn in Atlanta, Georgia, to Bronzeville in Chicago, to the U Street Corridor in Washington, D.C., to Boley, Oklahoma, to Black Bottom and Paradise Valley in Detroit, and to Greenwood, Black Americans built and operated banks, businesses, newspapers, theaters, schools, and constructed and sustained entire economies. Some of these areas and other areas not mentioned in this lesson were destroyed by racial violence, and some were dismantled by officials' approval of policy to construct highways through living and existing communities. Redlining also played a detrimental role, limited housing access, and officials limited funding to areas with a predominantly Black population. Dismantling occurred through urban renewal, which renewed nothing for the people who actually lived in these targeted areas. Here's what I want you to remember. Black Americans built prosperity in the face of adversity, and every single time they built something extraordinary, it faced oppositional threats, violence, political corruption, and destruction. Do not forget that spirit, that determination, community support, and that brilliance, which fed Black Americans' refusal to give up on themselves and their community. Keep your magnifying glass ready to look closely at your textbook pages, because there's always more to discover. Have you heard of any of these communities referred to as Black Wall Street before this video? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you.